In Mexico, President Andrés Manuel López Obrador presented the order of the Aztec Eagle to Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel during an official visit aimed at strengthening bilateral relations. In Türkiye and Syria, the death toll following a devastating earthquake rose to 25,401. Rescuers continue to search intensively for survivors in the rubble. And in Iran, the people held massive mobilizations commemorating the 44th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution's victory. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador presented the Order of the Aztec Eagle to Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel. The award ceremony took place at the foot of the altar of the great Acropolis of Etna. Upon arriving at the archaeological site and briefly addressing the Mexican press, Díaz-Canel highlighted the bonds between both nations and underscored the relevance of receiving the award. Moments later, the director of the National Institute of Anthropology and History, Diego Prieto, explained the relevance of the site. Prieto highlighted the findings unearthed during the construction of the Mayan train and explained the archaeological projects that are complementary to this work, emphasizing that this will underline the validity of the Mayan civilization in our time. For his part, President López Obrador expressed that it is time for a new coexistence of countries in the Americas and condemned the U.S. blockade imposed against Cuba for more than 6 decades. Brazilian President Luis Inácio da Silva said he and his United States counterpart Joe Biden talk at length about climate change, democracy, and social issues.
It is with great joy that I am returning to Brazil after I had a long conversation with President Biden on various topics of interest to the United States and Brazil, on social equality, racial equality, democracy, clean energy, most importantly the question of the climate, and strengthening democracy. I felt a strong will from President Biden to take part in the creation of a fund involving all of the world's developed countries so that we can try to take better care of our planet.
Meanwhile, President Lula da Silva stated that regarding the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, he maintained his position that peace cannot be achieved if more countries interfere in the conflict.
What I spoke about with President Biden, what I had already spoken about with President Macron, what I had already spoken about with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, is the need to create a group of countries that aren't involved directly or indirectly in Russia's war against Ukraine in order to find the possibility to make peace.
The Dominican Republic, represented by the Tigres del Licey, won the 2023 Caribbean Series with a 3-0 victory over host club Venezuela in Caracas on Friday night. It marks the 11th time the Tigres have won the title and the first time since 2008. No other club has won more Caribbean Series titles, and the Tigres win clinched the 22nd Caribbean Series championship for the Dominican Republic. The Dominican team scored single runs in the top of the 2nd, 5th, and 9th innings, but the biggest lift came from the mound, where starter Cesar Valdez threw 6 1/3 scoreless frames while yielding only 3 hits, walking none, and striking out 6. The 37-year-old right-hander threw 78 pitches, 54 for strikes, before turning things over to the bullpen, which silenced Venezuela's bats the rest of the way. United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights Volker Turk called on the international community to urgently consider the deployment of a specialized and time-bound support force in Haiti.
I also call on the international community to urgently consider the deployment of a time-bound specialized support force and in accordance with international human rights law and standards with a clear and comprehensive action plan. This deployment must be accompanied by the rapid and sustainable re-establishment of public institutions in gang-free areas, as well as a thorough reform of the judicial and penitentiary systems.
Turk justified his request for the intervention of a support force in the extreme situations recorded in the country during his visit to the Haitian territory.
The world needs to hear what I have witnessed and what my colleagues are documenting every day in one of the world's worst situations of poverty and terror. A capital where in many neighborhoods predatory armed gangs control access to water, food, healthcare, and fuel, where kidnappings are commonplace, where children are prevented from going to school or are recruited to commit violence.
Let us take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at the account at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Turkey, rescue teams and thousands of volunteers continue their efforts to find more survivors after over 130 hours of the devastating earthquake in the southeast of the country. Over 100,000 rescuers and emergency personnel are working in the affected area despite the difficulties caused by the high level of destruction, over 1,000 registered aftershocks, and the cold weather. According to local media, these rescuers managed to pull out from the rubble a family of 5 people who survived inside their collapsed house for 5 days. A 3-year-old girl and her father were also rescued from the rubble in Islahiye city, and an hour later, a 7-year-old girl was rescued in Hatay province. According to authorities, about 12 people were rescued this Saturday. Meanwhile, hopes remain high to find more survivors as efforts continue. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said the death toll rose to 21,848. Health authorities registered 80,104 injured so far. In Syria, health officials and doctors reported that the death toll from the earthquake that struck Syria last Monday rose to 3,553. Likewise, Hussein Makhlouf, Minister of Municipal Administration and head of the Relief Committee, revealed that 294,000 people were left homeless. All those displaced by the earthquake are now in over 20 reception centers set up in schools, mosques, churches, and sports halls. Meanwhile, Major General Safwan Bahloul, head of Syria's civil defense, claimed that the search for survivors under the rubble of collapsed buildings is still underway and assured that the possibility of finding survivors still exists, but is weakening as the time goes by. 2 Emirati aircraft delivered relief aid at Bashar al-Assad International Airport in the coastal city of Jableh in Syria after a massive earthquake killed and injured thousands in the country and neighboring Turkey. According to Deputy Minister of Local Administration for Environmental Affairs, Muataz Doji, the latest aircraft is the 11th from the United Arab Emirates in 5 days. Doji further added the plane carries 88 tons of food and humanitarian aid to help rescue people in the earthquake-affected areas. So far, 55 airplanes with relief aid have arrived in Aleppo, Latakia, and Damascus, of which 28 landed at Damascus airport. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and First Lady Asma al-Assad visited Saturday the city of Latakia, chief town of the homonymous province, which is one of the 4 departments most affected by the earthquake. The president spoke with the wounded admitted to the Teaching University Teaching Hospital. There he checked on the health of a man and his son, who were rescued after spending 5 days on the rubble of a collapsed building in the city of Jableh. Al-Assad also visited a training school in southern Latakia, turning into a shelter for families who lost their homes because of the earthquake. The president also spoke with Syrian and Russian rescue teams in the Al-Ghasalat neighborhood in the city of Jableh. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, head of the World Health Organization, visits the earthquake-affected Syrian city of Aleppo. The high official landed in the capital to meet with Health Minister Hassan al-Gobash and Aleppo's governor to assess the damage caused by the earthquakes and the current shortage of medical supplies in the hospitals. Likewise, Ghebreyesus' visit is the first by a senior official from a UN agency and came hours before of one from the UN humanitarian chief. Meanwhile, the UN is working to increase humanitarian aid to these areas from Turkey and from inside Syria. A group of 32 Cuban doctors have been sent to Turkey and Syria to help care for the thousands of victims left by the week's major earthquakes. The doctors are part of the international Henry Reef Medical Brigade set up by Cuban Revolution leader Fidel Castro in 2005, whose members have experience in disaster situations. When bidding them farewell at the airport, Cuban Health Minister Jose Angel Portal Miranda said this is how Cuba demonstrates its commitment to help people anywhere in the world where assistance is needed. These doctors making up this group, 28 men and 4 women, have previous experience in Pakistan's 2005 earthquake, Guinea-Conakry and Liberia 2014, 2016 Ebola outbreak, and more recently in Mexico, United Arab Emirates, Andorra, and Kuwait with COVID-19. The Office of the United Nations Organization for Refugees warned on Friday that 5 million people could be left homeless in Syria after the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that hit the country. UNHCR representative in Syria, Sivanka Dhanapala, said that Syria is going through a crisis within a crisis, referring to the economic situation in the country as a result of sanctions, the impact of COVID-19, as well as the severe winter in the nation. The representative also warned that prior to the earthquake, there were almost 7 million displaced people in the country, so the situation in Syria is even worse after the earthquake. The official of the international organization warned that the conditions in the country make it difficult to deliver humanitarian aid, despite the efforts of his office and Syrian government to attend to those affected. In Uruguay, the use of drinking water has been restricted in response to a persistent drought and a reduction in the flow at water sources that supply several areas of the country. According to the Board of Directors of the State Sanitary Works Administration, the measure comes into effect this Saturday, February 11th. It prohibits the use of drinking water for non-priority purposes, such as irrigation, washing sidewalks and outdoor patios, washing private vehicles, and filling swimming pools. The measure comes into force in the capital city, Montevideo, and in areas of the Canelones department in the metropolitan area, also in the cities of the departments of La Valleja, Florida, San Jose, Colonia, and Soriano. The agency will have duly identified personnel to supervise compliance with the measures, who will have to fill out a written report of any given violation and of the warning issued. This Saturday in Argentina, the National Meteorological Service has issued an orange alert in 6 provinces of the country due to the extreme high temperatures. Corrientes, Misiones, San Luis, Mendoza, La Pampa, and Buenos Aires are the regions where the orange alert will be enforced. Meanwhile, a yellow heat alert is still in effect in 7 other provinces. The high temperatures recorded since early this week in the center Patagonia region to the north of the country are caused by a warm air mass coming from the west of the country. Wind blowing from the north sector and little cloudiness make temperatures rise and remain high. We have more news coming up after a fun short break, so don't go away. Welcome back from the south. Tens of thousands of Iranians took to the streets in Tehran and other cities on Saturday to mark the 44th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. For the past 2 years, the anniversary was commemorated mainly in vehicles and on motorcycles due to COVID-19 restrictions. But this year, many flag-waving people traveled on foot to converge on the capital's iconic Azadi Square, also known as the Freedom Square, despite chilly temperatures. According to state television, the celebrations were held in more than 1,000 towns and cities across the country, such as Isfahan, Mashhad, Shiraz, and Tabriz. Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi addressed the people gathering in Tehran's Azadi Square on Saturday as the country celebrates the 44th anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. During his speech, President Raisi gave warnings to Western nations about meddling in the country's internal affairs.
They kick-started the project of riots and chaos. They thought they could stop the country through this project. They initiated a combined war consisting of political, economic, media, and psychological warfare. If the enemy thinks it can gain a foothold by presence in the region, it's badly wrong. We consider the security of the region and the Persian Gulf to be tied to the absence of America and foreigners.
Nigerian presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar promised to revamp agriculture and commerce in Kano if made president. Kano is Nigeria's second largest city and could help determine who wins the presidential vote. Nigeria's economy, which has battled years of slow growth, high unemployment, oil dependency, and now rising debt levels and inflation, has become a major campaign issue. Atiku promised to reopen Nigeria's land borders, hoping to spur more trade. The borders were shut by President Buhari in an effort to curb smuggling. The Russian Defense Ministry reported Saturday on the latest operation carried out against military infrastructures in Ukraine. According to spokesman Igor Konashenkov, Russia was able to successfully annihilate the targets as planned.
On February 10, the armed forces of the Russian Federation carried out a massive strike with long-range precision-guided air, sea, and ground-based weapons, as well as on main aerial vehicles against critical energy system facilities that ensured the functioning of enterprises of the Ukrainian defense and industrial complex and transport system. The goals of the massive strike have been achieved. All designated facilities were hit. The operation of energy-intensive industries of the defense industrial complex has been stopped. The transfer of foreign weapons, ammunition, and reserves by rail to the battle areas has also been blocked.
In France, citizens are staging new protests against a proposed reform to the retirement law promoted by the government of Emmanuel Macron. The General Labour Confederation, together with the National Union of Self-Employed Workers, have called for a new strike against the proposed reform which the National Assembly began discussing last Monday. The proposed reform seeks to increase the minimum retirement age from 62 to 64 years of age by 2030, a proposal that has been rejected by 9 out of 10 workers. The reform also seeks to increase the period of annual contributions and the elimination of some special retirement regimes. In spite of the expressed popular rejection, the government insists on the need to change the present retirement system in order to regain financial equilibrium. In the meantime, the mobilized groups have called for a new demonstrations for next Thursday, February 16. After meeting with Russian authorities on Friday, the International Atomic Energy Agency described the talks as an important step for the creation of a security zone in Zaporizhia. The meeting between the Director General of the Russian State Atomic Energy Corporation, Alexei Likachev, and the Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, aimed at finding better social conditions for the personnel at Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Grossi pointed out that the situation at the plant remains unstable due to its being located in the zone of military operation between Russia and Ukraine. The situation at the facility is delicate due to continuous attacks by the Kiev army reported by Russian forces. Chinese President Xi Jinping met with Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Sen as part of the latter's official visit to China. During the meeting, President Xi informed that China will encourage more Chinese companies to invest and start business in Cambodia. The Chinese president also pledged support Cambodia in the construction of transportation infrastructure. The Cambodian Prime Minister reiterated that his government firmly supports the One China policy and the Belt and Road Initiative. Both sides say they were ready to expand their countries' mutual cooperation and people-to-people cultural exchanges. Spokesperson for the Chinese Foreign Ministry Mao Ning made an official statement about the U.S. reaction on the unmanned civilian balloon that accidentally entered the U.S. airspace.
With regard to the unexpected incident of the unmanned civilian Chinese aircraft accidentally entering U.S. airspace due to force majeure, China has explained the situation many times and stated its position. The U.S. has the solution is pure political manipulation and hype. China is strongly dissatisfied and firmly opposes it.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.